Lake Victoria, or Victoria Nyanza, largest lake in Africa and chief reservoir of the Nile River, East Central Africa. The southern half lies in Tanzania, the northern half in Uganda. It borders Kenya in the northeast. With an area of 26,828 square miles, 69,484 square kilometers, it is the second largest freshwater lake in the world, after Lake Superior in North America. It is about 210 miles 337 kilometers long, 150 miles 240 kilometers wide, and up to 270 feet 82 meters deep. Though the Kagera River is its largest tributary, the most important source of water for the lake is rainfall. Its only outlet is the Victoria Nile. John Hanning Speke, searching for the source of the Nile in 1858, was the first European to cite it. He named it for Queen Victoria. The Arabs had called it Ukarwi. Henry Morton Stanley circumnavigated it in 1875. It became a reservoir when the water level was raised after completion of Owen Falls Dam, now the Nile Dam, in 1954. Africa's largest lake is nestled between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Uganda is home to 45% of Lake Victoria's 68,800 square kilometers surface area, and its waters are integral to the prosperity of millions of East Africans. Named after Queen Victoria by the explorer John Hanning Speke, the lake had been a part of local legend long before Speke's discovery of it in 1858. Speke's claim that Lake Victoria is the source of the Nile caused uproar in the scientific community and led to fierce debate. This large irregular-shaped lake has a maximum length of 359 kilometers, north to south, and a maximum width of 337 kilometers. It is relatively shallow and has a maximum depth of 81 m and an average depth of 41 m. The length of the lake's shoreline is about 7,142 kilometers, and it is the ninth largest continental lake in the world. Contains approximately 2,424 cubic kilometers volume of water. Lake Victoria is situated at about 1,135 m above sea level. Lake Victoria receives about 80% of its water from direct precipitation and about 20% of the water from the numerous rivers and small streams that drain into the lake. The Kagera River is the major river that empties into the lake. Some of the other smaller rivers that flow into the lake include the Katanga, Migori, Mogasi, Nzoia, Yala, Nyando, Sio, and Sundumirio rivers. The only river to exit the lake is the Victoria Nile, which leaves the lake at its northern shore near Jinjia town in Uganda. Several islands are located in Lake Victoria. Some of these islands are the Ruzinga and Mfangano Islands in Kenya, the Rubondo and Ukarwi Islands in Tanzania, and the Seas and Ngamba Islands in Uganda. Located in Tanzania's Ukarwi district, the island of Ukarwi is Lake Victoria's largest island and is also the world's fifth largest lake island. The Speke Gulf is located in the lake's southeastern part, while the Emin Pasha Gulf is situated in the southwestern part of the lake. The lake is referred to as Namlil by the indigenous Luo people of Kenya and Tanzania and as Nalyabail in Uganda. The British Indian Army officer and explorer John Hanning Speke was the first European to discover the lake in 1858. The lake was named by him in the honor of the British monarch, Queen Victoria. Speke also proclaimed this large lake to be the source of the Nile River, and his claim was verified by the American explorer Henry Morton Stanley, after he successfully circumnavigated the lake on an expedition in 1875. Sir William Garstin made a detailed survey of the lake in 1901. About 30 million people reside in the Lake Victoria region and depend on the lake waters for their sustenance. Fishing is a major economic activity of the people who reside along the shores of the lake. Some of the major towns and port cities that are located along Lake Victoria are Jinjia, Entebbe, and Kampala on the Ugandan side, Musoma, Mwanza, and Bukoba in Tanzania, and Kisumu, Kendu Bay, and Homa Bay on the lake's Kenyan side. The Nalyabail Dam was constructed in 1952 on the Victoria Nile in Uganda for the generation of hydroelectric power. The Kira hydroelectric power station was constructed in 2002. Lake Victoria's wildlife, archipelagos, and sheer vastness make it an integral part of any Ugandan adventure. It is the continent's largest lake, the largest tropical lake in the world, and the second largest freshwater lake in the world in terms of surface area. But it is most well known as the source of the longest branch of the Nile River, the White Nile. Lake Victoria plays a vital role in supporting the millions of people living around its shores, in one of the most densely populated regions on Earth. Unfortunately, the introduction of invasive species, the Nile perch and the water hyacinth, and pollution on a massive scale have had a harmful effect on the lake's ecology and biodiversity, as well as the amount of fish caught. In recent years, the water level of the lake has also been dropping, a trend attributed to regional drought and increased flows for hydroelectric power in Uganda. At 26,560 square miles, 68,800 square kilometers, Lake Victoria is the continent's largest lake, the largest tropical lake in the world, and the second largest freshwater lake in the world in terms of surface area. It is about the size of Ireland. Being relatively shallow for its size, with a maximum depth of 276 feet, 84 m, and a mean depth of 131 feet, 40 m, Lake Victoria ranks as the seventh largest freshwater lake by volume, containing 2,750 cubic kilometers, 2.2 million acre-feet, of water. It has a water catchment area of 71,040 square miles, 184,000 square kilometers. The lake lies within an elevated plateau in the western part of Africa's Great Rift Valley and is subject to territorial administration by Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. The lake has a shoreline of 2,138 miles, 3,440 kilometers, and has more than 3,000 islands, many of which are inhabited. These include the Seas Islands in Uganda, a large group of islands in the northwest area of the lake that are becoming a popular destination for tourists. Lake Victoria is approximately 255 miles, 410 kilometers, long and 155 miles, 250 kilometers, wide. It occupies a shallow depression, c 250 feet or 75 m deep, on the equatorial plateau, alt 3,725 feet / 1,135 m, between two arms of the Great Rift Valley. It has an irregular shoreline and many small islands. Numerous streams, including the Kagera River, feed Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria's surface area is shared among Kenya, 6%, Uganda, 43%, and Tanzania, 51%. The catchment area is 193,000 square kilometers, which extends to Rwanda and Burundi. The lake and its basin are endowed with abundant natural resources, which support the livelihoods of the 33 million inhabitants found in the basin within the three East African countries. These resources are fisheries, water, biodiversity. Together they make the lake of great socio-economic importance to the region. The fishery resources from the lake are a major source of revenue to governments and a source of employment, which supports livelihoods for 3 million persons who are directly involved in the fishery industry. It is estimated that the annual fish catch from Lake Victoria is about 750,000 metric tons, generating more than $400 million per year, of which $250 million lies in exports. Lake Victoria is also an inland water transport linkage for the three East African states. Furthermore, the lake is a major reservoir and source of water for domestic, industrial, and commercial purposes. The cities of Mwanza, Kampala, and Kisumu, as well as several major towns and urban centers within the basin with a total population of nearly 5 million, receive their water supply directly from the lake. Besides the cities and urban centers, several rural villages get their water supply from the lake and rivers within the basin. Lake Victoria and the rivers flowing into it form a major reservoir for hydroelectric power. In Uganda, power generation capacity is 320 MW generated at Nile and Kira dams. Farther downstream there is a potential for power generation at Bujagali, 250 mW, Karuma, 100 to 200 mW, and Kalagala, 450 mW. In Kenya there is a potential to generate a total of 278 mW of electricity from the Sundamiriu, Kuja, Nzoia and Yala rivers. The lake has other added values, such as climate modulation in the region and richness in biodiversity. Currently it is experiencing severe threats that are contributing to losses amounting to millions of dollars annually. Key among the threats is declining water levels and prolonged droughts in the entire basin. As a result of this, for example, ships cannot dock at the quays in most of the ports, electricity production at Jinjia has declined, and the intakes of the water treatment plants in Kisumu, Entebbe, Mwanza, and other riparian towns have been severely affected, resulting in a decrease in the amount of water supply. Since the 1900s, Lake Victoria ferries have been an important means of transport between Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. The main ports on the lake are Kisumu, Mwanza, Bukoba, Entebbe, Port Bell, and Jinjia. The steamer MV Bukoba sank in the lake on October 3, 1995, killing nearly 1,000 people in one of Africa's worst maritime disasters. Lake Victoria has 3 island shores which are worth a visit: Ukurua, Rubondo, and Ukura Island. The lake and the surrounding offers several tourist activities such as fishing trips, bird watching, hiking and boat rides. Swimming is also possible but should be done with caution due to malaria and the bilharzia disease. Lake Victoria is situated in northern Tanzania on the border with Uganda and Kenya close to the Serengeti National Park. The lake, which is located between the western and eastern Rift Valley, covers an area of 69,484 square km, of which 49% lies in Tanzania, 45% in Uganda and 6% in Kenya. It is Africa's largest freshwater lake and the second largest in the world after Lake Superior in North America. Lake Victoria flows out into the River Nile, supplying the river with fresh water through the whole year. The biological diversity of Lake Victoria is in a bad condition. Before the 1950s, the biodiversity was enormous with over 500 species of fish. The domestic fish species are extinct, because of the introduction of the Nile perch, which should eat the water hyacinth but instead fed everything. The water hyacinth was introduced to Lake Victoria and its surroundings by Belgian colonists. Soon the plant, which had no natural enemies, turned out to be an ecological plague, especially for the Kisumu Bay on the Kenyan side. It causes difficulties to fishing, transportation, drinking water supply and hydroelectric power generation. The wildlife of Lake Victoria, such as various bird species, chimpanzees, Sitatunga antelopes, and elephants, are protected by national park status. The settlements alongside the lake are mostly agricultural, inhabited by farmers and cattle herders. Major cities are Bukoba, Mwanza and Musoma on the Tanzanian side, Jinjia and Kampala in Uganda, and Kisumu in Kenya. The lake is also used economically for fishing, cotton and coffee production, and agricultural activities. The lake and its ports are used for transportation and transboundary trade between Kenya and Uganda. Lake Victoria has 3 island shores which are worth a visit: Ukurua, Rubondo, and Ukura Island. The lake and the surrounding offers several tourist activities such as fishing trips, bird watching, hiking and boat rides. Swimming is also possible but should be done with caution due to malaria and the bilharzia disease. Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda share Lake Victoria. It is the world's largest tropical lake and the second largest freshwater lake. Lake Victoria touches the equator in its northern side. It covers a total area of 68,800 square km superscript 2, and with a maximum depth of 80 m it is relatively shallow. A population of over 30 million people live in its basin. The ecological health of Lake Victoria has been affected profoundly as a result of a rapidly growing population, clearance of natural vegetation along the shores, a booming fish export industry, the introduction of several exotic plant and animal species, the disappearance of about 50% of its fish species. It had 400 species of cichlids, prolific growth of algae, and dumping of untreated effluent by several industries and human settlements. Lake Victoria is one of the African Great Lakes. With a surface area of approximately 59,947 square kilometers, 23,146 square miles, Lake Victoria is Africa's largest lake by area, the world's largest tropical lake, and the world's second largest freshwater lake by surface area after Lake Superior in North America. In terms of volume, Lake Victoria is the world's ninth largest continental lake, containing about 2,424 cubic kilometers, 1.965 times 109 acre-ft, of water. Lake Victoria occupies a shallow depression in Africa. The lake has an average depth of 40 meters 130 feet and a maximum depth of 80 to 81 m, 262 to 266 feet. Its catchment area covers 169,858 square kilometers, 65,583 square miles. The lake has a shoreline of 7,142 kilometers, 4,438 miles when digitized at the 1:25,000 level, with islands constituting 3.7% of this length. The lake's area is divided among three countries. Tanzania occupies 49%, 33,700 square kilometers, 13,000 square miles, Uganda 45%, 31,000 square kilometers, 12,000 square miles, and Kenya 6%, 4,100 square kilometers, 1,600 square miles. Though having multiple local language names, Swahili, Ukarwi, Jhologo, Namlilv, Luganda, Nyabayel, Kinyarwanda, Nyanza, the lake was renamed after Queen Victoria by the explorer John Hanning Speke, the first Briton to document it in 1858, while on an expedition with Richard Francis Burton. The lake is home to many species of fish which live nowhere else, especially cichlids. Invasive fish, such as the Nile perch, have driven many endemic species to extinction. The only outflow for Lake Victoria is at Jinja, Uganda, where it forms the Victoria Nile. The water for at least 12,000 years has drained across a natural rock weir. In 1952, engineers acting for the government of colonial Uganda blasted out the weir and reservoir to replace it with an artificial barrage to control the level of the lake and reduce the gradual erosion of the rock weir. A standard for mimicking the old rate of outflow called the agreed curve was established, setting the maximum flow rate at 300 to 1,700 cubic meters per second, 392 to 2,224 cuyd/sec, depending on the lake's water level. In 2002, Uganda completed a second hydroelectric complex in the area, the Kira Hydroelectric Power Station, with World Bank assistance. By 2006, the water levels in Lake Victoria had reached an 80-year low, and Daniel Cull, an independent hydrologist living in Nairobi, Kenya, calculated that Uganda was releasing about twice as much water as is allowed under the agreement, and was primarily responsible for recent drops in the lake's level. Since the 1900s, Lake Victoria ferries have been an important means of transport between Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. The main ports on the lake are Kisumu, Mwanza, Bukoba, Entebbe, Port Bell, and Jinja. Until 1963, the fastest and newest ferry, MV Victoria, was designated a Royal Mail ship. In 1966, train ferry services between Kenya and Tanzania were established with the introduction of MV Uhuru and MV Umoja. The ferry MV Bukoba sank in the lake on May 21, 1996 with a loss of between 800 and 1,000 lives, making it one of Africa's worst maritime disasters. Another tragedy occurred recently on September 20, 2018 that involved the passengers ferry MV Nyerere from Tanzania that caused the deaths of over 200 people. On November 6, 2022, Lake Victoria was the site of a commercial passenger aircraft crash. Precision Air Flight 494 and ATR 42-500 carrying 39 passengers and 4 crew, crashed while approaching Bukoba Airport, resulting in 19 fatalities. Thank you for watching this video.